I'm wanting to do a lifestyle issue here and change my life. Um, what do you want me to do? Everybody's different physically, chemically. Everybody's different financially. And God knows what you can afford. People say, well, do I have to eat organic? Do you have the availability? Do you have the money? Look what happened when New York was condemning and Maine was condemning Michigan because Michigan was still eating meat. Testimonies, Volume 1. She says, you leave them folks alone. They don't have the access to food like you do on the East Coast. They ain't got it yet. Leave them alone. And so you work that out with God. So for breakfast is the 3 servings or 6 servings of half of the fruit and 1 cup of brown rice. That's breakfast. For the new, that's cooked brown rice. 1 cup of cooked brown rice. Breakfast. Now, dinner. Now, do y'all know when dinner is? Do you know what time of day dinner is? Part noon. That's right. Do you know where the word lunch? Did you know Ellen White said that lunch is unhealthy for us? Lunch is unhealthy for us. She did. So did Kellogg. And so did many other writers in medicine back in the 1800s and 1700s. Lunch was not healthy at all. So my question was, what's lunch? When she talked about eating, she talked about eating breakfast, dinner, and supper, just like we did on the farm. So where'd lunch come from if she said it's bad? What do we call the evening meal about 11 o'clock at night? A snack. Okay? Prior to the American Industrial Revolution, wife is at home. She fixes husband and family big breakfast. For the noon meal, which they call dinner, wife is at home, fixes big meal. For supper, wife fixed meal. When the husband left and went into work in the factories, wife was not there to make big meal. So he took little meal. And what did they call little meal? Lunch. So when he came home, wife made big meal. What did they call big meal? Dinner. Dinner. Because it was bigger than supper. Because he hadn't had her big meal for noon. Do you call it Thanksgiving lunch? Do you call it Christmas lunch? So that's where that issue came from lunch. And why some people. So if you come to my neck of the woods and someone asks you to come for dinner and you come at supper time, you've missed it. We've already eaten. It's the noon meal. And that's why farmers still say dinner for noon and call the evening meal supper, because that structure is still there. So for the noon meal, which we call dinner, Kempner would use a nice big salad. And in that vegetable salad, raw, and it could be greens, it could be lettuce, cucumbers, broccoli, cauliflower, just like if you went to a smorgasbord. They had a bunch of raw vegetables, carrots, and whatever, radishes. And 1 cup of brown rice. That is the protein, the brown rice. Now at Duke, for supper, he repeated breakfast. If you're reversing diabetes, you skip supper. When I went to the clinic, they had significant reversal rate of diabetes. And sometimes you're so brainwashed, you don't put 2 and 2 together. And so I go to the physicians and I say, listen, I'm the director, and I say, you're only doing, you got to have breakfast, mid-morning snack, dinner, afternoon snack, supper, and an HS snack. That's our sleep snack for diabetics. And they decided to play with me. Why? It's a standard of practice. Did I not just leave the standard of practice when I left regular health care? But yet I wanted to take it back. I wanted to take it with me. It's like people who move in from other places, and they want to bring their New York City and their Chicago to, Rogers. And I say, no, leave your New York City there. Don't bring it here. So I was trying to bring my standard of practice with me because it's what I knew. And then they asked me one more question, and I walked out the door. How many diabetics you reverse? Where you come from? 20 years, 0. So I went back to the office, and why? I'm still so brainwashed. I'm still not convinced. This has got to be dangerous because it's what the American Dietetic Association recommends. So I made a phone call to a little lady in Seal, Alabama. And who do you think that was? Who's in Seal, Alabama? Who's that little lady? So I called Dr. Agatha. I said, Dr. Agatha, the numbers are here, but they're not doing mid-morning snack. They're not doing afternoon snack. They're not doing supper. They're not doing an HS snack. Is this not dangerous? And you know what she did? She started laughing. She said, Brother Walt, that's how you reverse diabetes. Feed them breakfast, feed them dinner, and that is it. What is breakfast mean? Break fast. From supper to breakfast. She says, you just extend that break fast from dinner to breakfast. And see, she grew up on a dairy farm like I did, so we spoke the same language. She goes from dinner to breakfast, and you'll reverse diabetes. Well, I trusted her. And so I left him alone. Yes, with Duke, you will reverse diabetes, but it's a lot slower. And let's get it done and get on the plan, to the maintenance program. The last time I was in, and this is what I do when I go to Africa. I do a 3-day water fast, and we don't have juicers, so we go straight to the Duke program. And it's a 14-day program. We meet every day for 14 days. On Sabbath, we have Sabbath school and church. But the other days, Sunday through Friday, it's from morning to evening. Last time I was there, I had a lady come in. Blood sugar was right at 400. She was using a walker. She's on insulin. She's on metformin. And in 14 days, her blood sugar is 115. Her blood sugar was how much when she came in? 400. In 14 days, her blood sugar is how much? 115. No insulin, no metformin. The time before, lady comes in, hers is around 400. She's on insulin, metformin. 14 days, she's at 124. No insulin, no metformin. Amen. Isn't that amazing? Amen. Yeah. So it works. Now, were they done? No. And we'll come back and we'll talk about that when we talk about diabetes. But so on the restoring program, I'll use the juicing, then I'll use the Duke program, and then I go, I'll come back and I'll address that now. And then I'll go to the Cornell diet. So how do you know when you're finished with the restoring program to when you can go to your maintenance program? It's when you quit rubbing the arm with sandpaper. You got to get to cause. You got to get to the outcomes. So you got to look at what problems they have. So you have to do an assessment. What's the person's health problems? What are health problems that people have? Diabetes, cancer, cholesterol, arthritis, inflammation. And so you do that until, definitely if it's hypertension, diabetes, obesity, those simple things, you do it until it's fixed. And so you do it till they meet ideal body weight. Well, what's ideal body weight? Well, in healthcare, everybody but sports medicine uses something called what? BMI, body mass index. And then I'll have someone say, well, that doesn't work for me. I'm big boned. And I have to agree that I like percent body fat better. I had a guy come in to see me, And this guy breaks the Guinness book, or he's dead now, but this is back 20 years ago. He would come in. He was in his mid-60s. He would break the Guinness Book of Records at least once a year, if not multiple times a year. And this guy was big. And as I pulled out the BMI, he was kind of a shorter guy. His weight was not even on the BMI chart. That's grotesquely obese. But I could walk up to this man and I could pinch him. And it would be like pinching this right here. You got no fat off this guy. You could not take a caliper. And remember how we used to do fat calipers? You couldn't get nothing. He was muscle, just solid muscle. He was amazing. And I realized that BMI is not maybe for everybody, and that's why sports medicine uses percent body fat. Now, in percent body fat, we used to dunk people. Remember that? You dunk them. And then they use calipers, fat calipers. And then people decided they didn't want to get pinched anymore. And we quit pinching. And it's not appropriate for a male to pinch a woman. And that's probably good to do anyway. And so we went to these machines that you can either stand on or hold that your gym has. And it runs electricity up through you. And it will tell you what your percent body fat is. That is more accurate, probably, I would say. And so whether you want to get to ideal body weight, whether it's percent body fat or if it's BMI. Number one, if you're diabetic, then you stay on that program until your BMI, until your A1C is 5.6 or less. Your morning fasting glucose is 99 or less. And you're off all medication. If you're hypertensive, you no longer have hypertension and you're off medication. As examples. So you stay on it to restore till the car is fixed. Once the car is fixed, then you go on to the maintenance program. So what's the maintenance program? So I go from Duke University, whether I'm using the fasting or the juice diet, or I'm using the Duke diet, and you can do it systematically there, or you got to negotiate with people, y'all. Why are we sitting down helping our neighbor with diabetes? To point them to Jesus. So if you tell that person and they say, I just don't know if I can eat that way. You say, well, then you're not a candidate for this program, sorry. Did you lose your opportunity? And so you say, okay, in your head, how can I negotiate with this person? I got people. See, the problem is when I went to lifestyle and I started learning this, I wanted people to do plan A. But there are people who are not even on the alphabet. They're not even at Z. They do no fruit. The only vegetable they do is potato in the form of French fries or potato chips. I mean, there are literally people out there who eat no fruit, no vegetables. They eat meat and processed junk. That's it. And what if I tell that person you got to do a juice fast? It ain't gonna work. And so you gotta meet them where they are. And if they say, I don't do water, well, you're 250 pounds, so you need this much. Start with just a glass once a day. And maybe even put some peppermint essential oil or some wild orange or some tangerine or some grapefruit essential oil in there to make it taste a little bit better. Because you're not sitting down with them to reverse diabetes, you're sitting down with them to point them to Christ through being effective in reversing their diabetes and giving the credit to God. So you have to negotiate. And let's say that they're willing to do those, but you may say, well, get up in the morning and say, what do I want? I could either fast for breakfast, which fasting for breakfast, they got this thing out there right now called intermittent fasting. The problem, and I believe in intermittent fasting. Ellen White teaches intermittent fasting, but they got the clock messed up. They're doing dinner and supper. What's the problem with that? See, when you don't eat breakfast within 2 hours of awaking, you increase your risk of a stroke and a heart attack by 150%. 150%, according to Neil Nedley's book, Proof Positive. If you don't eat breakfast within 2 hours of awaking, it's based on the platelets. So you want to eat breakfast within 2 hours of waking. Plus, when you get up and eat breakfast, you increase the metabolism, and so you burn calories. When you eat dinner, you increase metabolism, you burn calories. And at 2:30, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, our metabolism turns off. So what we eat after there, we don't burn those calories. And we got to get to ideal body weight. So while you're doing, instead of doing dinner, supper, just switch it back to breakfast, dinner, and you're still doing intermittent fasting. But it's how the body works. So let's say you get up in the morning and you say, you want to do a juice? Great. You do juice for breakfast and you do Duke for dinner. And so you do a big old salad and brown rice, or it could be even fruit and brown rice. But that's their options. They can fast, they can juice, or they can do the Duke diet. Or they can do just raw. They can just do raw. And they have a choice in it. Also part of that Duke found, interesting how the rocks cry out. You need to drink water, adequate water. Then Duke started looking at exercise, and they looked at exercise for little humans versus big humans, children versus adults. And Duke found that little humans exercise 4 times a day. You got recess in the morning, recess after dinner, recess in the afternoon. In the afternoon, you go home, you play, and have chores 4 times a day. Remember that? I go into schools today that have no recess unless the kids are involved in sports, competitive sports. Those kids don't go outside at all. Can you imagine that? Think back to, go back in your mind's eye when you were in elementary school. Wouldn't that have been terrible awful? So Duke said, what if we do that with the big humans, the adults, and let's exercise them 4 times a day? Huge benefit in reversing diabetes, huge benefits in weight loss and cardiovascular disease improvement and other health issues, especially renal failure. If you can reverse renal failure in 3 months, it's amazing. Put them on the Duke diet, do the juicing. Do the Duke diet, do the exercise 4 times a day. The problem so many times they're put on fluid restriction, and they need that fluid actually. And give them corn silk, dandelion root, coenzyme Q10, and 3 caps of activated charcoal twice a day. And it is not uncommon to see renal failure, stage 4, reversed in 3 months. Isn't that cool? Renal failure, kidney failure. So exercise is huge. And then Loma Linda found that a 20-minute power walk lowers the blood sugar more than 1 shot of insulin. Is that not cool? So here Kempner at Duke, he's having them exercise 4 times a day. It's like giving them 4 shots of insulin a day. Which would you rather have? The exercise. Yeah. Then the next thing that Duke said is you need to be asleep by 9 o'clock. Is this not the rocks crying out? Why is it Duke saying that and not someplace in Southern California saying that? Isn't that not sad? But it works. Now, Duke doesn't add the one I add, and I add trust in God. You've got to have trust in God. And for us today, that's just a given to anything I've been talking about this weekend. But Duke's not going to talk about trusting God. Mayo's not going to talk about trusting God, but we got to talk about trusting God. So that's what I do to restore. Then the maintenance program is the Cornell program, and that's T. Colin Campbell. And T. Colin Campbell talked about a plant-based diet. Did you know that Fruit Loops are plant-based? Fruit Loops or plant-based? Did you know when we got married, Mary Lou wanted to get married on Friday, like Adam and Eve? That's a good idea. If you don't worry about if people can come or not, because they're probably working. But we did. That first night, she fixed me supper. It was a bowl of Fruit Loops. That was 40 years ago. And she had a cucumber sandwich. But Fruit Loops are plant-based. That means they're okay, right? Did you know that Oreos are plant-based? Oreos are plant-based. They're plant-based. They're plant-based. Yeah. So Campbell said, plant-based just isn't enough. What if we say whole food, plant-based? Will that get rid of the Fruit Loops? Yep. Will it get rid of the Oreos? Yep. And then Campbell said, we got to go even further. It's got to be with variety. Variety. It can't be same-o, same-o. And when I study Harvard is now saying you need they don't say whole food plant-based diet because that's Cornell and they don't want to compete with that. But they'll say you need to eat fruits and vegetables and grains and nuts in variety. They're saying the same thing, but they don't want to use Campbell's word because that's Cornell. Have you heard of that diet before? Have you? Whole food, plant-based diet with variety? Yes. And then Campbell said, we need to exercise. We need to drink water. We need our sleep. Exercise outside, exercise physiologists say is 10 times more effective physiologically than exercise inside the gym. There comes your sunshine, and there comes your fresh air. Isn't it amazing? And how long have we known this? In 3 days. And what are we doing with it? Why is it the rocks are crying out? As she said, our folks will will not talk about it, but those who are not Christians will talk about it more than us. Did you know, someone came in the store the other day and they wanted to know if I had analogs. No, I don't have analogs. Analogs, chocolates and stuff like that. Why don't I have chocolates? Why don't I have analogs? Well, one, they're expensive. And I live in the mountains, and our mountain people they can't afford it. Two, they don't know what it is. They know what deer and turkey and bear is. And so why even introduce it? Because analogs are a transition food. And people get on it, and then they get hooked on it. Loma Linda in Worthington food. That's right. The sodium is a big issue. Yeah. And there's a lot of salt in it also. But the local people where I am from, they just don't know it. So why even introduce it? And as the pastor said, it's high in sodium. Did you know the New Age health food stores will not carry it? Because it's not healthy. Amazing. And so that's the Cornell diet. And so that's what Mary Lou and I have been on now for almost 25 years, is the Cornell diet, a whole food, plant-based diet with variety. Now, in that program, what do we have? We've got a program that we learned eating, where we did the juicing and the Duke diet and some fasting. That was the nutrition component. And then when we got to the maintenance program, we went to a whole food plant-based diet. We did water. Both programs require water. Both Duke and Cornell require adequate water. Both programs require exercise. Remember, on Fat, Sick, and Nearly Dead, was he out there exercising? Sure was. Exercise. Both programs required going to bed. Campbell talked strong on getting your sleep at night. Kempner at Duke talk strong on getting your sleep at night. The only thing that I add above Cornell and Duke, which is the foundation, is trust in God. That's how you implement a lifestyle program. It's really simple. And one of the complaints I get with juicing is people will say, "Do I have to quit?" One of my staff, she was Catholic, and now I forgot what she is now. It's one of them European. What's the religion over in Russia? Orthodox. So she's Orthodox now. So she went from Catholic to Orthodox, which is a lot of similarity. And boy, she's learning. She juiced for 70 days, and she informed me Thursday that she's doing another 60-day juice fast because she feels so much better juicing with energy, weight loss. She told me Thursday, she said when she stopped regular food and started juicing, she lost weight, the pain stopped. Now this lady is, she's retired Air Force, a colonel. And she said, I have no pain when I juice. But when I started eating again, she said the pain came back. Well, why? She started using the sandpaper again. She started eating those foods that weren't as healthy for her. Yes. You can go to my website, themustardseed.us, themustardseed.us, go to education, and go to, I think it's called downloads or something, and there's a page and a half of recipes. But I try to do mostly vegetables and maybe a little apple. If they're diabetic, maybe Granny Smith apple. So here's our form. Here's Mary Lou's form. I'll give you her recipes. So she does a green drink, which is our most popular that we sell out of the deli. It's 4 stalks of kale, stalks, leaves, 4 leaves of kale, 2 handfuls of spinach, a half a bunch of parsley, 2 stalks of celery, unless they're long term, and we do 4 because you can have some sodium issues if you go long term. Let's say you're going for 60 days juicing, you can have some sodium drops. So if you do 4 stalks of celery, it takes care of it. She'll do 1/4 of a cucumber. She'll do about 2 apples. She'll do the juice of 2 lemons. No, the juice of, half a lemon. And she'll do a piece of ginger size your thumb, and she'll throw some turmeric in there. For her orange juice, it's orange in color, not orange, she'll do 4 to 5 carrots, depending on the size. She'll do the 2 stalks to 4 stalks of celery. She'll do 1/4 of a cucumber, the apple, the ginger, and the lemon, like we talked before. And do the red juice, she just adds a beet to it, a half a beet or a 1/4 of a beet. But be careful. I had a lady call me one day, and she called me, and you get women here kind of get wound up, old country women. Why are you trying to kill me and my husband? I said, what are you talking about? Why are you trying to kill me and my husband? I said, ma'am, what are you talking about? She says, you told me to go juice for us, and we're peeing and pooping blood. I said, ma'am, did you put any beets in that? Yeah. How much do you put? She said, I put 2 beets in each one of them. I said, ma'am, y'all are peeing and pooping beet juice. Oh, okay. Goodbye. People get wound up. So be careful on the beet juice. No, I don't use the blender. I just do juicing. Well, Dr. Schultz said, y'all remember Dr. Schultz? Don't listen to him, just read him, because he's got a terrible mouth on him. But Dr. Schultz says if you can afford a juicer, get whatever you can get. It's better than nothing. And there are juicers that are better juicers, but at least just get a juice. But you don't want to drink the juice. That's weird, isn't it? You don't want to drink the juice. If you drink the juice, you miss 1/3 of your digestion. So you've got three components of digestion. You got the first part of the stomach, the second part of the stomach, and then you have the small intestines. The mouth has 4 jobs. It's got taste buds to taste the food. Now, was that a good dinner we had today? So it's like a magnet. It makes food go in the mouth because it tastes good. The food tasted delicious today. And so the mouth goes, I want me another bite of that. Some food don't taste good. You've probably had some food before and you go, I ain't putting another bite in my mouth. And so you have taste buds to encourage you to eat. The next thing you have in your mouth is teeth. And teeth are to puree the food. We don't have teeth in our stomachs. We're not cows and we don't chew our cuds. And so you want to chew it until it is pureed. I was reading this week in Mrs. White's writings, and she said, it is not the quantity of food that matters. It is how long it is in the mouth. Isn't that interesting? The teeth puree it until it's baby food consistency. Now, who's ever mixed concrete and wheelbarrow? Anybody mix concrete and wheelbarrow? Okay. So you put in your sackcrete, you put in your water. Is it ready now to pour in the hole? Ladies who've made cake, you've got your powder, you've got your liquid. You pour the liquid in the powder. Is it ready to go in the oven? You've got to mix it. You got to mix the concrete until there's no dry powder, until it's all the same consistency. The same thing when I would mix cakes with my grandmother. My grandmothers and great-grandmother, they taught me to cook well. The problem was they taught me Southern cooking. It wasn't healthy food. But the same thing has to happen in the mouth. In the mouth, when you put food in your mouth, you've got food, whether it is solid or liquid, and you have spit, saliva. The kids know spit when I teach the kids. In the saliva has a couple jobs. One is to moisten the food. It helps you swallow it. It keeps your mouth wet. But it also has 3 chemicals in it. Amylase, the majority, protease, and lipase, digestive enzymes. And so if that first part of digestion in the stomach, that part of the stomach, we're told, does not have amylase, protease, and lipase. It's dependent on the saliva soaked food to start breaking down there. But the food gets loaded in the mouth. And then when you swallow it, it goes here and it starts breaking down. But if you did not load it in the mouth, it sits here. And it's going to sit there, solid food, somewhere in the word that the textbooks use, Social Security age. So 45 minutes to 60 minutes. For children, it's a half hour normally. And then it goes to the next part of the stomach, where then you have hydrochloric acid and you have more enzymes. But that first part does not have enzymes in it. You've got to load it with what's in your mouth. So if you swallow your juice, you're not loading it with those enzymes. So you chew the juice just like this. You look like a cow chewing its cud, but you're loading it with the saliva. And when the mouth does this, it pumps in more saliva. And so you keep loading it with saliva. So you want to chew your juice and swallow it. So that's what we do on juicing. Any questions on that part? Yes.
3 days of just water?
Just a water fast. You can do 5 if you want to.
Only water?
Only water.
For all, just 3 days?
Yes.
Nothing else? What about juice?
No. Just a water fast. You start juicing on day 4. Juice, you can juice 60 days if you want to. Yeah. And then go to raw, then go to Duke. The brown rice and fruit and brown rice.
Do you juice with a juicer or you just drink juice off the shelf at a store?
That's a good question. Very good question. Doug Batchelor taught me that people who ain't got no money, they can't afford a juicer. They can't afford even,
V8 juice?
Doug said to use V8 juice. I had a girl come in one time. She looked like a whooped dog. I mean, looked bad. She was late 20s. She had twins that were 10 months old. She had just stopped doing some heavy drugs. Went to the ER in our county because she didn't want to go to her county. And she was having some major withdrawals. She cold turkeyed. And the ER said, we don't do that here. You go see Walt down at the mustard seed and see if he can help you. So she came in. And I mean, literally, this girl looked whooped bad. And so we sit down, we start talking. And I'm going through her history and talking to her. And I said, where you go to church? She says, I can't go to church. I said, why can't you go to church? She says, I'm not perfect. I've been a drug user. I've been a drug user. I said, ma'am, I said, church is a hospital for sinners. I said, you ever heard of David? No. And I told her about this guy called David. And I said, you ain't killed nobody, have you? I'm just a country boy. I talk country to country people. And I said, you ain't killed nobody, have you? She said, no. I said, and I told her about this guy David and what he did. And then I said, you sure you ain't killed nobody? No. I said, well, let me tell you about this guy. His name's Paul. And I told her about Paul. He killed a bunch of people. And God said he forgave them. And he said David was a guy after his own heart. I said again, you sure you didn't kill nobody? No. I said, you're good. And we spent 2 hours just talking about that. Do you see how it opens the door? We spent a total of 3 hours. But 2 hours was just going through the Bible and showing her how she had hope in Jesus. And so she didn't have any money. So I said, she's living with her mama, lost her job, lost everything. And I said, do you think your mama's got enough money that you could go to the Dollar General? Y'all have Dollar Generals here? I said, do you think you could go to Dollar General and get a Dollar General V8 juice and you could drink that? She says, I think my mama could do that. I said, okay. I want you to go home. And that's what I sent home. I encouraged her to drink water. I encouraged her to get to sleep. I encouraged her to exercise. But nutrition was V8 juice from Dollar General. She came back the next week to see me, and the girls at the office did not even recognize her. That's how good she looked from V8 juice. 1 week.
So isn't V8 juice cooked and processed? So you're not getting vitamins and enzymes from that, but you're getting minerals.
Well, it would be like cooking food on the stove. Well, it's like when you put up your tomato juice. You're going to cook it enough to can it. And so they've cooked it enough to can it. So it's got some nutrients in it. It's nothing like if you did your own juice. Not at all. That's just quantum leap. But there are people who I have that just don't have the money to juice. And I have them V8 juice. And Doug found it to work, and I found it to be better than what their old diet was.
Well, that's where I believe that God will bless.
Yes,
what's there.
I agree.
Because at least you're doing something.
So what I tell people, and it just gives me another opportunity, just as you said, to interface God. They'll say, well, I ain't got no money to buy organic food. I say, it's okay. Just get what you can get. And you ask God to make up the difference. Now, do you believe God can do what she just said? Absolutely, He can. He can make that food just clean as could be, and just like organic. He can make miracles happen. And so, yes, and that's just another opportunity to share His power.
When you do juicing, do you drink or eat the whole part of it as well?
No, you throw that in the compost when you make your own juice. You put that, because all that is, it's not nutritious. Well, yes, it's fiber, and fiber is part of nutrition. But you just squeezed all the nutrients out, other than the fiber, and now it's orange because it's orange dyed fiber, or it's green because it's green dyed fiber, or it's red because it's beet dyed fiber. Yes.
I tried to help somebody with diabetes in the past to do water fast, and we couldn't go for 1 day because he got really, really sick, and his blood sugar dropped right along.
Was he still taking his medicine? Yes. That's what happened. So you just so what you do is you just stop the medicine, especially insulin. So this is where you work with somebody that has experience. Usually the pills aren't the problem, the metformin. It's usually the insulin. Low blood sugar is not diabetes. Low blood sugar is either one of two things. You've eaten too much food. You haven't eaten enough food for the amount of medication, or you've had too much medicine for the amount of food. Same thing, just looking at it each direction. You ever driven a stick shift? Okay. So you let out the clutch and you push the gas, and then you get on a hill, and you have to start looking on how to use the brake and the clutch and the gas, and that's what you're doing here. So if you're not comfortable enough, then skip the juicing, the fasting, if it's causing that to happen. Now, and I'm glad you said that because I failed to mention something. As they do this, their blood sugar is going to start coming down. Their blood pressure is going to start coming down. And so what you do is you say you want to work with your healthcare provider. Don't alienate the healthcare provider. That's when you get in trouble. You'll make enemies real fast in town when you tell people not to take their drugs no more, and you start doing that, them docs will come on you like white on rice. And so you say, we got to work with your doctor. And so as your blood sugar comes down, as your blood pressure comes down, as you see that number start coming down, call your doctor, nurse practitioner, whatever, and say, I'm doing Duke University's program, and I'm exercising, I'm drinking water, I'm eating healthy. So now that kind of takes them worries off that provider. And you say, because I'm doing that, now my blood sugar is dropping kind of low. Can you help me cut back on the meds? And they'll do that. And you just have them work with their healthcare provider and minimize and cutting back, and finally they stop. If their health provider is not willing to do that, which you don't find that much anymore, they're pretty good, you find another healthcare provider that is used to doing that. So yes, if they're diabetic, usually we'll stop the insulin, and you usually don't. But see, most of the people who come into me, their blood sugar on insulin or on metformin, they're over 200. So I got a lot of room to play with in just 3 days. Any other questions, sir?
On the diet with the rice for lunch, I think I heard you say previously no dressing. Is that
Oh, good. Thank you. I didn't mention that, did I? With the salad. Yes. So the question was, when I talked about the Duke diet and the salad, I didn't mention on what to put on it. I'll explain it in a minute, but let me say, I'll explain why in a minute. There's no dressing, no oil, no salt, no cheese, and no meat. And I'll explain why in a minute. You can use lemon juice. That's what Duke uses. But you got to negotiate. And so I negotiate with low sodium salsa. And usually the men are the ones you have problems with. They want more than just lemon juice on that. But you usually can get their attention. You saying, you like salsa to dip your chips in? Yeah. What do you think about putting sauce on there? Well, yeah, I could do that. And so, thank you. So either salsa or lemon juice on top of the salad. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions? Yes.
There's also so many different herbs that you can
Mm-hmm.
use in lemon juice.
Absolutely. Sure can.
Mrs. Dash and whatever.
Sure. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, so for juicing, what do you think about using like a Vitamix?
Vitamix isn't a true juicing. It still has its fiber. And so what we're trying to do is we're trying to cut back on that time that digestion takes place. If you use a Vitamix, which is good. I mean, I use Vitamix all the time. And when I make smoothies. But for what we're looking to do here is give the stomach a break because once you put that fiber in it, you're now extending digestion to about 2.5 hours to break it down. And I want to give that digestion a break and just juice where it's in the blood within 15, 20 minutes. Yes. And just, you can. Look at how the Norwalk works. The Norwalk is just like a meat grinder. Grinds it up, then it puts it in a bag and smashes the bag to where just the juice strains out. So yes, that would work. It depends on what you're doing. Typical is 16 ounces 3 times a day. I had a lady come in, she was weight was like 398. She loved to eat. I mean, I know this lady. She enjoyed eating. She had diabetes, and so she said she had juice. And I said, okay, do 16 ounces 3 or 4 times because I didn't want her falling off the wagon. She comes in after a day of juice and says, I can't do this no more. I said, why? She's just too much. I said, well, how much can you do? She's 2 is all I need. I said, good, go for it. And she lost a good bit of weight. She did well.
So we talked earlier about the flaxseed. If you were doing a juice thing, if you're trying to like get diabetes totally under control by doing juicing, so you get eliminating the fault. If you're doing flaxseed, I know flaxseed is one of the important things I've been told as a diabetic.
Yeah, I probably wouldn't do flaxseed during that period of time I'm doing the juicing. Once I get to the Duke diet, I'd add it back in. Yeah. Yes.
So it's 3 days and then BA juice after that?
Mm-hmm.
For how long?
You could do.
2 weeks?
You could do whatever you feel God's leading you to do, up to 60 days. Yeah. Any other questions there?
So, you originally said that juicing is to restore. So if you're trying to overcome something, then you're going to juice until you overcome that what you're trying to overcome.
Yeah. How long you can juice? I know people who juice 100, 130 days. Yeah. And feel good. And actually, when they start eating again, they don't feel as good. Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about diabetes and why we're not eating the salad dressing and the cheese and the whatever else. Diabetes. As I mentioned earlier, diabetes is easier to reverse than toenail fungus. So there's 3 things that causes type 2 diabetes that I have found. And one, well, you have trillions of cells in your body, trillions of cells. And around the cells, you have insulin receptors. And what happens is insulin opens a door and allows glucose from the blood into the cell. Everybody's happy. But what happens when you become insulin resistant? When it's resistant to the insulin to open that door, you then don't have adequate glucose going in. Body produces more insulin. Insulin goes up, trying to make more door openers. And so how do you fix it? Well, why is that door not opening? That's what you got to figure out. Like we talked yesterday, why is the lift on the tractor not lifting? Well, it's because it's got a leak in the line. And so you can either pay the guy, the hired hand, to sit on there and pour in hydraulic fluid all the time, or you can fix the leak. So do you want to pay the doctor to keep pouring in medicine, or do you want to fix the problem? So what happens? The insulin receptor doesn't open right because of three things. One, if the cell gets too big. If the cell gets too big, the door doesn't open right. So what do? Shrink the cell. That's it. Ideal body weight. Shrink the cell back down to where it belongs. Get to ideal body weight, whether it's BMI or percent body fat. The second cause is it can get clogged, and here's the problem. It can get clogged with fat from our diet. Now, yes, we have to have fats in our diet. You've got fats, proteins, carbohydrates, vitamins, minerals, so fats, major. But what we're looking at here is fats from oil. Now, what's our problem here? We fry everything. Maters, taters, ice cream. Go to Africa and tell them that we fry ice cream here. And they say, what? You fry ice cream? Yeah, we fry ice cream. I mean, we fry Oreos, we fry Twinkies, do we not? Pickles, okra. I mean, we just fry poke. We fry everything if we can fry it. And then if we don't fry it, we pour in oil. My grandma would make a pot of beans for Sabbath. And literally, she would put more than a cup of oil, vegetable, but it was vegetable oil. So it was fine. It was vegetable oil. It literally looked like an oil slick on top. And my southern tongue would lap that stuff up. Oh, it was so good. Today, I would not want it because I've been 24 years on a different diet. But that oil, whether it's just oil or frying it, it clogs this insulin receptor. And so Duke said, stop the oil right now until we can get things fixed. Yes, I know that there's people out there, Pritikin and Ornish, and even Campbell doesn't even like using oil, even in the maintenance program really that much. And Esselstyn, they don't like using oil. Yeah. So
if you're on 60 days of juicing, there's going to be oil in that, and your brain needs some kind of oil.
So on that juicing, it doesn't need the oil in that 60 days. No. Yes. But once you get, it'll be fine. Now, once you get to the Duke diet, what has fat in it? Olives, avocados. And so there's going to be some healthy fats. So here, this is really cool. So you got the fats from the oil. Does dairy have fat? Yep. So Duke said, stop the dairy. And then does meat have fat? So stop the meat. And guess what? It's like the story of salvation. What happens when you stop sinning? Does it clean you? Yeah. In the way that the body's made, if you stop all of the oils, dairy and meat, the body goes and cleans that receptor out. Is that not cool? That is so cool. And so in the restoring program, I don't use any of those kind of fats. In the maintenance program, because it's plant-based, I don't use the dairy and I don't use the meat. But I do add back every once in a while oil in moderation. And why do I do that? Well, yes, we do have some fats, but does the Bible use oil? So use the right oils, healthy oils. So the first reason it didn't work right was what? The cell got too big. The second reason was why? It was clogged up. The third cause of type 2 diabetes is where you have inflammation. Inflammation makes it where it just don't work right. And we said today that Harvard claims that the number one cause of inflammation is processed foods. So does Duke stop processed foods? Does juicing stop processed foods? Yeah. The second thing that Harvard really comes strong on in causing inflammation is sleep deprivation. Does Duke say to go to sleep at 9 o'clock? Does Cornell say to get your sleep at night? Yeah. And so getting your sleep, not using processed foods, then it takes care of the inflammation considerably. What's another thing that really causes inflammation? Processed food, but what about, which it is processed, what about high fructose corn syrup? High fructose corn syrup, or just processed sugar, So, but that's a processed foods. But sometimes we got to say what it is. So if you cut those guys out, it really makes a difference on inflammation. There's another thing that causes inflammation. This lack of exercise, but do they talk about exercise? Yep. Those guys, the rocks are saying exercise. Another thing that causes inflammation real bad, and Dr. William Davis, cardiologist, found it in 1990. Wheat, which has been super hybridized from 14 chromosomes to 42 chromosomes, and is sprayed with Roundup, causes inflammation. Now, when I go to Europe, I eat bread all day long. Not all day long, but I ate it for breakfast, I ate it for dinner. I went through Frankfurt, and I give my receipts to Mary Lou, and she files them. I don't like to file, so she files stuff for me. And she looked at it, she said, why'd you get two little things of bread in Frankfurt at the airport while you were there? I said, because I could. It doesn't hurt me. Because Europe, it's illegal to super hybridize. It's illegal to use Roundup. So does Duke use wheat? Does Cornell use wheat? No, not in the restoring process. So no grains at all during that process. And so you get rid of the inflammation. So for diabetes, that's what we do. We do the Duke program or juicing, whichever one you want to do it. You stay on it until you have a normal A1C of 5.6 or lower. You have a glucose of 99 or lower, and you're off your medication. You're doing that diet. You're doing the exercise. You're getting to bed by 9 o'clock. You're trusting in God, and that's how diabetes reverses. Type 2. Type 1. Now, type 1 is a whole different animal, and you'll read where they'll say they would not have even called both of them diabetes because they're totally different. Now, it used to be called what kind? Adult onset and juvenile. But what happened? We were documenting that 16-year-olds had adult onset diabetes. That don't sound right. So it got changed to type 1 and type 2. What is a major cause of type 1 diabetes? Who remembers Dr. Milton Crane from Loma Linda? He then went to Weimar. Crane told me years ago, he said, Walt, the number one cause of type 1 diabetes is dairy. Well, guess what I learned when I took nutrition from Cornell? The number one cause of type 1 diabetes is dairy. We learned that it increases the risk of type 1 diabetes by 1,100%. That's what Cornell found. That's significant. They found at Cornell that dairy is the most significant chemical carcinogen ever discovered. At Cornell, they turn on cancer, turn off cancer, turn on cancer, turn off cancer by giving dairy, taking away dairy, giving dairy, taking away dairy. they found that and the question that we asked Campbell, what if we just go to skim milk? He said skim milk was even worse than whole milk. The casein level is higher. It's the casein's the problem. So Crane, to reverse type 1 diabetes, and he had reversal of type 1 diabetes, but the key was in the honeymoon period. The problem is catching it in the honeymoon period. The number one is you stop the cause. What's the cause? Number two is you give niacinamide. And niacinamide is a type of B3. And you can go to search under New Zealand study, type 1 diabetes, juvenile, you can even put adult now, but juvenile, type 1 diabetes, niacinamide. And it would tell you how much niacinamide per kilogram, and it's really low. It's not even aggressive. You can give a whole lot more. And the other was, Crane at Loma Linda found that if you exercise the child really hard after they ate, it also helped. That's not normally what we do, but that's what he did. If you caught it in the honeymoon period. But what's the problem with the honeymoon period? They're now telling us the honeymoon period is different per person, but the biggest problem is parents don't raise children. Parents don't raise children. They're in school, they're playing games, they are the babysitter has them while the mom and dad's out to supper, at the movies, they're off at friend's house. Parents aren't paying attention to their children. And so it's the school nurse, it's the teacher that's finding it. And many times it's the honeymoon period's gone. And you don't have that opportunity to really help. So what do we do to help with type 1 diabetes? Do the same as type 2 diabetes. And we will normally find the requirement of 60, 80 units of insulin can easily go down to 5 or 6 units of insulin. Yes.
Do you remember the study that was done by Gabriel Cousin when he took 10 diabetics?
Yes. I was standing here trying to remember what the other thing I wanted to talk about, and that's exactly what it was.
Yes.
Thank you.
He had 2 that was type 1 diabetics, and they were reversed.
Yes.
The one reversed back because he wouldn't give up his alcohol.
Yeah, right. Thank you for reminding me. So there's a Dr. Cousins was that Arizona or New Mexico?
Arizona.
That's what I thought. And he has a place there, and you can watch the documentary. It's called Simply Raw. Simply Raw. And watch that documentary, and he can show you how doing raw actually did help to reverse type 1 diabetes. And that young black boy actually went back to school, got his degree, his doctorate degree, ND, and he now helps folks with type 1. Yes. He now helps people with type 1 diabetes. So that's the only other way I know of. Yeah. Any questions on diabetes? Yes, ma'am. I'm not sure on that one. Yeah.
Repeat the question.
Yeah, it's total. Yeah. So, yeah. So yeah. We have 15 minutes. Was it 4 o'clock or 3:30? Oh, good. We got 45 minutes. Okay. So anything else on diabetes?
Type 3.
Pardon?
You're talking about the type 3.
Yeah. Just do the same thing. Yeah. Yeah. I find just doing the same thing works because I have seen a type 2 convert to type 1. I've seen it. And when they check oh, isn't it terrible when brain starts getting tired? What you check for your amount of insulin that you produce. No. See, no, the chemical. The test that you do to see how much insulin you're producing. I'll think of it. Well, anyway, I had a guy a year ago, and he was a type 2 historically. Now, this guy is in his early 80s. Been a diabetic as long as I've known him, for 19 years. And finally, last year, he decided, well, I want to do something about it. So I thought, great. And so for all that time, he's been diagnosed as a type 2. And it was definitely an adult onset. And so we started doing, and nothing was working. This wasn't working, what I just mentioned. And so I sent him to a friend of mine, and I said, let's do some labs on him and see. And it turned out he was a type 1 now. And his insulin, his pancreas quit producing insulin. Yeah, C-peptide, yes, thank you. C-peptide is the test. And he wasn't producing it. And so and some people call that a type 3, where you were a type 2 and you go back to like a type 1. Cardiovascular disease. The biggest problem in cardiovascular that jumps out is hypertension. And as we talked last night, I think, when was it? Or this morning, sometime we talked about it. Today we did. There's you've got to get to the root cause of hypertension. It is true that hawthornberry works great, like 3 different types of blood pressure medicine. And hawthornberry is good to use on high blood pressure. I have a friend, he's just a straight drug writing guy, but he found that he could give hawthornberry to his hypertensive patients and didn't have the side effects that the pharmaceuticals did, and he uses hawthornberry.
It's just like it's trying to get out. And I started taking hawthornberry,
Hawthornberry is the best thing I know for arrhythmias. And also, I use hawthornberry and iodine. You can do pills. You can do like 2 or 3 caps 4 times a day. If you do use hawthornberry has a half-life of 4 hours, so you want to use it 4 times a day. Or you can do the extract, 1 ml, 4 times a day. Iodine, 12.5 milligrams of iodine. Mm-hmm. Or take the capsules. The drops of iodine last about an hour and a half. If you use the capsules like Lugotab or iodoral or Ithroid, it will last about 5.5 hours, 6 hours, something like that. Yeah. So for hypertension, yes, you can use the hawthornberry, but you're still masking and managing. I had a friend call me. He's a surgeon. He said, Walt, he said, low potassium will cause hypertension. So what do you recommend is really good in potassium? He says, I got another physician friend that needs it. I said, try, there's a lot of things you can do, but try blackstrap molasses. And it worked. But what was he doing? He was treating the symptoms, and he wasn't getting to root cause. Why? Stress raises cortisol, and then lowers potassium. Address the stress, and then you don't have the potassium bottom out. So stress is the number 1 cause of type 1 diabetes. Of hypertension. And what do you do for the stress? There's a number of things you can do for stress. We can talk all afternoon on that one. But back in 1978, I was at Florida Hospital, and there's an old doc. I wish I could remember his name. And he said, Walt, if you ever have a patient with stress, he said, the best thing I found was B-complex. And B-complex is amazing for helping with stress. And then Neil Nedley talks about lithium orotate. Lithium. And lithium orotate is tremendous. It's just an element. It's not the drug lithium. It's an element. And Lithium is great for helping with stress. Magnesium is very, very good for helping with stress. But then you go to the 8 laws of health. What's going on with stress? You're raising cortisol. What's the best way to lower cortisol? Exercise. Tremendous. So if you're doing what Kempner said at Duke, exercise 4 times a day, you're taking your medicine to lower that cortisol. Wouldn't you rather use the 8 laws of health? Get your water. Water's huge on stress. Nutrition, huge, we learned today because of brain function. Sleep. Another thing you want to do is medical missionaries. I'm not letting you off the hook. Y'all supposed to be medical missionaries, right, preacher?
Yes, sir.
Right. So as you work with people, as medical missionaries, you want to figure out how to help them. Well, an old surgeon taught me years ago. Here, this will make it easy. I'll just drink out of this. He says, you got to identify the organ or system that's having the problem. And then you have to identify the organs or systems that affect the primary organ or systems, which would be a secondary, tertiary. Example, stress. What is the organ or system? Nervous, brain. So is stress a brain problem? Yes. So you've got to address the brain. And he says you got to take away anything that may harm it. What could harm the brain? Lack of sleep, dehydration, caffeine, drugs, alcohol, processed foods, work, relationships. This is sad. 2 weeks, this last week ago, I went in the school system and I go in every month. And I asked the kids, I talked on stress, helping them with stress for the summer. This is K through 8. K through 8. Do y'all have stress? Yes. Can you imagine? What's the cause of your stress? Do you want the major, almost every kid told me as their major cause of stress? Home life. Isn't that sad? Home life. That is so sad. They didn't say finances. They didn't say mom and dad yelling and screaming. They just said home. One boy, though, said, he goes, getting old. I said, buddy, how old are you? He said, I'm 11. Yes.
You know, the highest percentage age range suicide increase?
Tell me. 11.
And I thought, I didn't even know what suicide was as a 12-year-old and would have never considered it.
Wow.
Now it's the highest percentage.
11-year-olds.
Suicide.
Wow. Terrible. So as you look at stress, you look at those laws of health. Again, that's the given. Then you add things on top of it for hypertension. And so as you look at how do you address stress, and we talked, and then if you have anxiety, you can use the lithium orotate. You can, we talked about yesterday the lavender essential oil, or you can use the vetiver essential oil. Amazing. Put a drop here, transdermally goes into the blood, rub the wrist and breathe it. Boom, within 2 minutes to 3 minutes, anxiety's gone. Lavender and vetiver, vetiver, also is tremendous for PTSD attacks. vetiver, vetiver. So it transdermally goes into the blood here at the wrist. As they breathe, it's going into the lungs, into the blood. It is amazingly fast. So there's things you can do like that for the stress. Number 2 is dehydration. When you're dehydrated, the blood is thicker and stickier. When you're dehydrated, the brain doesn't have as much water. Therefore, you're more prone to the first problem, stress. When you're dehydrated, you don't urinate as much. It's through urination that you get rid of sodium. When you're dehydrated, the kidneys don't work as well, and the kidneys are the switches that run blood pressure. When you're dehydrated, the conductivity, that's the electricity in the body, is higher. And so when the conductivity goes too high, then it causes hypertension. The next one is ideal body weight. There's all kinds of research on being outside ideal body weight. Bring your body back to ideal body weight. Number 4, sleep deprivation. And that's where the American Heart Association, just June of 2022, identified sleep deprivation as now the 8th major cause of cardiovascular disease. Isn't it interesting? They have 8 laws that cause cardiovascular disease. Sleep is now one of them. Something, huh? So sleep is huge. Another one is renal failure. Again, the kidneys are the switches that regulate the blood pressure. And so if you're having kidney failure or kidney problems, address that. Another one is sodium, too much sodium. And again, the issue with sodium is conductivity goes up. It is not as much Celtic salt. It is not as much Himalayan salt. It's the little girl with the umbrella that will kill you. The Mortons, that table salt stuff. She's the one to stay away from. You can use the Celtic and the Himalayan in moderation, and you won't see as much of an issue. It's that processed stuff. Another one is clogged arteries, atherosclerosis. If you want to wash your car off, your truck, and you got your garden hose, and you want more pressure, what do? Reduce the orifice. You reduce the orifice, pressure goes up with clogged arteries. That lumen, you have a smaller amount. Another thing that it will do it is hardening of the arteries, arteriosclerosis. If you have a pipe, say you have a bilge pump that's pumping, and as it's pumping out of the pond, as you're pumping the pond, and when the pump pumps, it flexes. Your pressure is going to not be as much as if you have a rigid pipe. Because as the pipe gets bigger, then your pressure is going to go down. But if it's rigid and the pump pumps, when it pumps, the pressure is going to be higher. And so when we have hardening of the arteries, that then causes hypertension. And the other one is if you have cardiovascular issues. And for the cardiovascular, we use the Duke diet. The Duke diet is considered. How many of you have heard of John McDougall? John McDougall says that the Kempner diet is the best cardiac diet in the world. The Duke diet. The brown rice and the fruit, the brown rice and the salad. According to McDougall, that is the best cardiac diet in the world. Actually, McDougall says it'll fix about anything. Tremendous diet. So that's hypertension. Let's say cholesterol. The best way to lower cholesterol is just quit eating cholesterol. That's the best way. Yes, you can use Cholesterol Pro. I think it has bergamot in it. Or you can use Alimed has Allison. It's called Listeril, which has garlic in it. You can use red yeast rice. Red yeast rice, though, is a statin. And so even though it's a phytostatin, it's a statin. Therefore, it will lower CoQ10. And so if you take red yeast rice, you still have to take CoQ10. Only if you're taking a statin. Whether it's a pharmaceutical statin or a plant-based statin, you still have to take CoQ10 for lowering cholesterol. Because a statin, what happens is, and NASA figured this out. So when you take a statin, you got a tree, and if you hew around the tree, what's going to happen? If you bark the tree all the way around, what's going to happen? It's going to die. So what happens is the doctor knows that you're probably not going to quit eating cholesterol because you're from Arkansas and you just grew up eating it. You know what I'm saying? People don't want to change their diets. And so he wants to get your cholesterol down. So what he does is he hews around that tree, and now the human body does not produce as much cholesterol. But there's another branch on that tree. And this is not me speaking, it's what NASA found. There's another branch on that tree, and that branch produces coenzyme Q10. And now the body doesn't produce as much coenzyme Q10. So if you take a statin, you're going to have to take CoQ10 because your body's not producing enough CoQ10. And CoQ10 is needed for oxygenation, cell wall stability, just a lot of reasons we need CoQ10. But here's where NASA got involved. There's another branch on that tree, and it makes a chemical that helps you with short-term memory. Astronauts were having short-term memory loss. And NASA goes, that is not an option. And the guy I was listening to teaching on this, he was an astronaut and a medical doctor. And he said we had to readjust our thoughts on using statin drugs for astronauts because it causes short-term memory loss, or can. And so even if it's a pharmaceutical statin, or if it's a statin like red yeast rice, a phytochemical statin, it still shuts down your body's production of coenzyme Q10, and you need CoQ10. You have to take it extra. So the biggest thing is stop eating cholesterol. How do you know what has cholesterol in it? Animal product. Yep, that's simple. If it's got a mama or eyes, yep. But then there's two more things that will do it. Will affect your cholesterol. Dr. William Davis, this cardiologist I mentioned earlier, when he started studying wheat in 1990, he found that the American wheat, not the European wheat, but the American wheat, which is a super hybridized wheat of 42 chromosomes, increases LDL. That's not good. It doesn't have LDL. It doesn't have cholesterol in it like the animal products, but it will raise your LDL. It still has the 42 chromosomes. It just doesn't have the my brain's getting tired. I apologize. It doesn't have the Roundup. Yes. So if you just don't eat so like for bread, I eat millet and flax bread. There's some questions. Yes, there's some benefits. There also can be some problems with sourdough. Yeah. Millet and flax bread by Sammy's out of St. Pete. Oh no, Tampa. Sammy's Bakery out of Tampa. And also Mary Lou made me a blackberry cobbler for my birthday the other day. Oh, it was good. Those are far and few between. She doesn't cook sweets very often, but she made it for my birthday, and she made it out of the einkorn wheat out of Italy, and it's called jovial wheat. And so that's what she made out, and that's 14 chromosomes, and doesn't have any Roundup. Oh, it was good too. There's another one that will affect your cholesterol, and that is cashews. Cashews eaten in excess will lower the HDL. That's bad. Yeah. And so we actually found it where we were, and then we found it ourselves. And two of our physicians said, well, let's check. Because what we found is our HDL levels were dropping significantly more than other lifestyle centers as we did comparative analysis. And so why? Yes, we expect HDL to drop with lowering cholesterol with this program, but not as we were dropping more than the other folks as we benchmarked the other lifestyle centers. So we started looking, what could be it? And we had two physicians that said, both females actually, and they said, y'all use a lot more cashews here than anybody else does. Cashew gravy, cashew milk, cashew butter, cashew loaf, cashew. Why was Dietary using cashews? Because we'd stopped milk and we were trying to make it taste rich. And so every day we had cashews every meal, something to do with cashews. So I said, okay, to the dietary department, I said, let's discontinue the use of cashews and use almonds or something. Boom. HDL stayed high. Better than the other places because they were using some cashews quite a bit, but not as much as us. And we had stopped using cashews, so our HDLs were the best. 6 months later, I noticed our HDL is starting to drop again. Over a couple month period, I see it just significantly starting to drop. So I went back to dietary. Are we using cashews again? How'd you know? There's like a kid with their hand in a cookie jar. I said, the labs told me. Are you using cashews again? Yeah. But it tastes so much better and all these excuses. I said, we can't manage it that way. So we're just going to have to stop using cashews because we're using too much and it's affecting people's HDL. Now, what's the problem with HDLs? Because see, HDLs are the cops. They're the bad guys that go and get the robbers, the LDL, put handcuffs on and take them back to jail. And so you've got to have a good HDL level to keep your LDLs down. And you don't want to lower the HDL too low with cashews. Cashews in moderation is fine. We found no problem every once in a while. But where people try, because when they stop dairy, so many of our recipes have a lot of cashews. And so you just don't use a lot of cashews.
So,
Almonds, yeah.
so please identify and clarify a moderate amount of cashews.
You know, if you did them once a week, you'd be fine. Once every 2 weeks. Just not a lot. Yeah, because it causes problems with the HDL. Yeah, you can use almonds. We started using almonds in dietary. It doesn't taste as good. You just, if your cholesterol's okay, you're fine. No. But the average person out there that you're going to be working with as medical missionaries, they got problems with cholesterol. But for you individually, if you don't have cholesterol problems and you got a good HDL, then you're fine.
I just want to say that I have been drinking distilled water for 20 years, and my blood pressure is just the same as it was 20 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And when I empty out my dehydrator machine, that gunk that comes out of there, I do not want that in my veins. You know, you can't see it, it's very tiny, but it will get in there and it will correct your veins if you're drinking tap water.
Yes. Yeah. If you want to divide a church real quick, like what color pews do you want? Talk to them about what kind of water to drink. The first thing I'll say is don't drink tap water unless I have people Appalachia's poor. And they'll say, well, I don't have the money to just go out and buy water. Okay? I'd rather them drink tap water than no water. Anything else? Yeah, you can take a shower in it. Yeah. Well, buying water, like bottled water. They don't want to buy that.
Are we done with cholesterol?
Yes.
Can we just open the floor?
Let's do it. Let's open the floor for questions.
Open the floor for questions, but we need for you to
On
speak
we
in the
didn't do
mics.
cancer. Let's talk cancer real quick. You want to talk about cancer real quick?
Cancer, okay.
So on cancer, number one on cancer is you can have the exact same problem, same cancer, treated the same way and have two different outcomes. Did I talk about why? I didn't talk about that here, did I? And the question, yeah, let's say you've got one person with the same kind of breast cancer and one person does whatever the protocol is and another person does the same protocol and you have two different outcomes. And the question is why? And this is very important as medical missionaries. Remember y'all are taking a medical missionary class? Don't be selfish. Don't keep this to yourself. Use this and help other people. Have it as an opening door that can get out and share Christ. And this is something that will help you as you work with other people. A lady came in this week, cancer. Why? The question is why? Why does she have cancer? Well, the question is, why does one person live and one person dies? And I said, it's like, not long ago, I was listening to Mary Lou, and she was talking to one of my grandsons, Aiden. He's my youngest grandson. And Aiden said, he asked a question, and she answered it. And he said, why? And she answered again, another way that he could possibly understand. And he goes, but why? And so she tries again to answer it, and he goes, but why? And finally, she goes, Aiden, you just got to trust me. When you get bigger, you'll understand. Do you remember that? Do you remember your grandfather saying that to you, or your grandma, or your parent? Are you doing that to your own kids or grandkids? And so we say, God, why? And God said, trust me. When you get bigger and you get to heaven, I'll explain it to you. Because right now you have a finite mind. And there's some things you just won't understand. Does God do that to us? He does. And that's hard for some people. But when you put that, and she goes, I now understand. I now understand. Because she knew that, because she had dealt with grandkids and children. The other thing on cancer is very, very important. You can put all your eggs in the basket. Let's say you're 85 years old and you've got cancer and you might live another 10 years. And so you're doing everything all day long trying to figure out how to get rid of that cancer. But you have an opportunity of eternity. See, I can guarantee people 100% healing from cancer. I do. I tell people, I can guarantee you 100% cure from cancer. And I have doctor friends that tell me, Walt, you cannot do that. Yes, I can. I can. Here's what you do. You accept Jesus as your Savior every day. Not just when you're 8 years old, because they do that where I'm from. You can commit murder, but it's okay because I accepted Jesus when I was 8 years old. Accept Jesus as your Savior every day. Become real good friends with Him, because it says when He comes back, there's people who have done miracles and cast out demons, but you weren't friends with Him. He says, I didn't know you. You didn't spend time with me. Spend time with Him. Know Him. Become friends with Him. Number 3, if you've done something wrong, ask for forgiveness and don't do it no more. Number 4, read the Bible every day. If it says do it, do it. If it says don't do it, don't do it. And I can guarantee you, if you do those 4 things, when Jesus comes, you will live.
Amen.
Whether you die now or you die later, you will have eternity. 10 years ain't nothing. And so I encourage people, yes, do something about right now. Yes, there's some things you can do. You can juice and take herbs and whatever. But don't put all your eggs in that basket. Work on also that relationship with Christ. Do those 4 things, and you can have eternity. Accept Jesus as your Savior every day. Become real good friends with Him. Spend time with Him. If you've done something wrong, ask for forgiveness from the person you've done them wrong, and Jesus too. And then stop doing it. Turn away from them. And number 4, read your Bible. And the Bible says do it, do it. If it says don't do it, don't do it. If you do those 4 things, the Bible promises, God promises us, He will take us to heaven. And so we can guarantee people healing. But what do? I juice a lot. Let me back up. Let me clarify this. Yes. So let me clarify this. When people come to me and talk to me about cancer or call me on the phone or whatever, I give them a little over 3 pages of stuff that they can do. And we don't have the time to give the stories. But I tell them, do not do what I'm telling you. Don't do what I'm telling you. I tell them to take that paper, read it over, and sit down and talk to the medical director. Talk to God. And they'll say, but Walt, should I do chemo? I don't know. Can I do them together? I don't know. Ask the medical director. If God tells you to do chemo, do chemo. If God tells you don't do chemo, don't do chemo. I ask them, if you buy a car, do you ask God if you should buy that car or not? And they go, nah, I just don't feel right. And you don't buy it. Or, yeah, I feel real comfortable. That's what God wants me to buy. People understand that. Well, then do that with this. If God, what does he want me to do? And you pray and you ask him, whether it's juicing. And if you do juicing, I do the Gershon program, which is 8 ounces every hour for 12 to 13 hours. Phenomenal outcomes. It's 96 to 104 ounces. At 96 ounces, we had over 2,000 calories. I like ACAC. Amazing. It's my favorite. I like Podiarco. I like chaparral. I like burdock. You know, there's some great herbs that are cancer killers. You can do poultices. You can do charcoal poultices. You can do castor oil packs. You can do herbs. There's a new thing out there right now where this oncologist is finding that melatonin is stopping and even killing 40% of his cancer patients. Most oncologists don't have that kind of outcome. Over 40% of his cancer patients, cancer's gone with using melatonin. He's using either 180 milligrams of melatonin when they go to bed, or he's doing, if there's metastasis, if it's metastasized, he will do 60 milligrams 4 times a day to 120 milligrams 4 times a day. And he's finding that melatonin stops the growth of cancer. He says, I'm fine if you still have cancer, but it stops. Because right now you have cancer. But if I can stop the growth of it, then we're okay. And so he's finding that when he gives that melatonin 4 times a day, it's stopping the growth of cancer. He's still using a little of his chemo, but I think it's only just to keep him in the good graces. It's remarkable. Yes, he does 60 milligram capsules. So it'd be 3. This one comes in capsules, the one he recommends. Melatonin, yeah. 4 times a day for cancer, yes. He does 180, yes. And he tells them not to use a white light, use a red light to wake up so it stays on all night long. Then there's far infrared. Far infrared is great for cancer. There is fever treatments, and you can do fever treatments with far infrared. So there's a number of things that hydrogen peroxide, food-grade hydrogen peroxide works very well. I've seen brain cancer, prostate cancer, plumb gone. And so you take a glass of almond milk, and because it makes you nauseous. Most people use water, but I use almond milk because you can get nauseous. 3 drops, 3 times a day. It's got to be food grade. Regular hydrogen peroxide a key because it's got a stabilizer in that's poisonous. Pardon? 35% food grade. 3 drops 3 times a day. Increase by 3 drops every day until you get to 50 drops. There's people who do 75, 150 drops. You will get sick, but it's very effective. But textbook is 50 drops, 3 times a day. And I've seen that to be very effective. Pardon? Nauseousness. And so if you can only do 30 drops and you just can't do any more, 30 drops is better than no drops. Yeah. 3 drops. Now that's for cancer. If you're the best thing I have found to work on candida or candidiasis is food-grade hydrogen peroxide. 1, the candida diet, no sugar, and no wheat, no yeast. And then you do just 1 drop day 1, increase by 1 drop every day, 3 times a day. somewhere between day 10 and 20, you're going to get sick. It's the die-off. So you stop, go the day before. So let's say it's day 16. So you go back to 15 drops, stay there for 5 days. And then once the die-off is over, feel like you've been beat by a baseball bat. It's flu-like symptoms. It's the Hirschheimer syndrome. And then you go on up to 25 drops, stay there for 2 months, come back down and drop a day. That's for candida candidiasis. Yes.
Can we switch a subject? We have a lot of people in this area that are dealing with tick-borne illnesses.
Yes.
Could you give us some
Yes.
kind of ideas?
My youngest son, Carson, that you've heard me talk about, he got Lyme disease and had it. He got it around 8 years old. Had it until at 18. We treated it. We tried. Nothing would work. At 18, it got so bad that he had been to fire school. He couldn't run halfway to hear that door and follow him and start crying. 18-year-old boy should not be crying, just running that far. The pain in his heart was so bad. So I stopped him from doing interior fire attack. And he could fight outside, work the truck, but he could not go inside with those conditions. So I contacted Allison in England. And I said, do you have any research on Lyme disease using Allison? And they did. And we used the Allimed 1 teaspoon twice a day for 3 months. It went away. It came back in 6 months. We did 1 more month, and it's been gone now 23 years. No, 22 years. 22 years. I'm sorry, I'm wrong. It's been gone 11 years. 11 years. I'm sorry. My brain's not working. 12 years. It's been gone. Just mail it. They mail it to me, and I mail it. Pardon? No. They mail it to me from England, and they don't put ice in it or anything. Yeah, 1 week is easy. It can go as much as 2 weeks. Allimed. It's a strong Allison. It's a garlic. Allimed. Allimed. And so for the tick disease, what I do is I do Allimed 1 teaspoon twice a day for 3 months. I also do a parasite cleanse, like black walnut and wormwood. And so I do a 0.5 ml twice a day for 2 weeks, crescendo over that 2 weeks to 2 ml twice a day. So you start out with 0.5 ml twice a day. And over that 2 week period, you crescendo up to 2 mLs twice a day. So that's going to kill everybody that's alive right now. And then you stop for 1 week. That allows the babies to hatch, and then you start again. And same thing, 0.5 ml BID twice a day, crescendo to 2 mLs twice a day. And that's a good parasite cleanse. Also, I encourage people not to use fruit or sugar. Yes, ma'am. Same thing. Yes. The biggest problem with that is the meat. And so it's not as bad as the Lyme is, but I treat it the same way. Yes, any other questions? Yes, sir.
So, earlier talking about waters, I just want to go back a minute. Some people mentioning distilled waters being the best. Others believe we need to take alkaline water a certain amount. You talked about putting out tap water that maybe reverse osmosis. Is there a reason any of those waters have areas we need to use them in, treat things or whatever?
Do you remember Harold Cherney? The book Natural Remedies Encyclopedia by Vance Farrell. Well, the other name was there is Harold Cherney. Harold Cherney worked until he died at Eden Valley. Before that, he was at Weimar. Before that, he was up in Virginia. Very smart man. Cherney was triple board certified. He was a surgeon, emergency medicine, and family practice. And I asked Cherney about distilled water because he was big on distilled water. I said, Cherney, what about mineralization? He said, Walt, when do you drink your water? I said, other than when I'm eating. And he says, you absorb best your minerals at meals. So get your minerals at meals, not in your water. Then I have folks that are big into high pH. For cancer, I've seen it work very well for cancer. 9.5 to 10. The alkaline water.
And then regular water,
Yes.
doesn't matter, just switch them off.
A person, yeah, people can drink back and forth. Yeah. The biggest thing, what does Ellen White say about water? Pure, soft water. You don't want hard water. Pure,
So what's hard water?
a lot of minerals.
A lot of mineral.
Pardon?
That's distilled, isn't it? Pure and soft.
It is.
Distilled is soft.
Soft, yeah. Any other questions? We've got 4 minutes.
What would you say to someone who has cysts and microcalcifications in the breast?
The best thing I have found is to treat both breasts symmetrically. And castor oil works very well. Yes. And frankincense. Yes, ma'am. Alkaline water has a high pH, and we find it works well for cancer. And so there are folks that have found alkaline water to be very beneficial. Yeah, I mean, like your Conga machines can do as much as 11. You don't want to drink it that. I mean, they drink it for cancer for that. But, let me back up. I'm pretty sure it is 11. Yes, it is 11 for cancer is what they're drinking. But, I encourage people to just pray about it. Ask, and people say, "Wow, that's just so flippant, pray." No, it's not flippant. Ask God what you need to do. He knows your body. And so I'm serious when I say pray. Ask God what you need to do. Everybody's body's different. Yes, ma'am. For thyroid. Okay, several things on thyroid. There's 4 no's on thyroid. Number 1 is no chlorine, no fluoride, and no bromide. Chlorine, fluoride, and bromide inhibit the absorption of iodine, and your thyroid has to have iodine. Chlorine, fluoride, and bromide. Bromide is a dough enhancer. It's a dough preservative. It's in all kinds of food and soft drinks and all kinds of stuff. Even showering. I was reading a study just maybe last year. It said taking a shower in hot city water, which has chlorine, you're going to get more chlorine than drinking the water with chlorine. And so you can get something from your hardware store to help take that chlorine out of the shower. The 4th thing is a no on thyroid is no wheat. And Dr. Davis again talks about the wheat effect on the thyroid. Don't eat wheat, the American wheat. You can have the European wheat, but not the American wheat. The yeses on thyroid, iodine. Now, it depends on if you have hyperthyroid or hypothyroid. If you have hyperthyroid, be careful with iodine. Be cautious there. But if you have hypo, you're probably not going to have a problem. 12.5, 25, as much as 50 milligrams of iodine. Then you can use some B2 and B3, 250 to 500 milligrams of B2, 500 to 1,000 milligrams of B3. That helps you absorb the iodine. And then selenium, anywhere between 2 to 400 micrograms of selenium. Zinc, 30 to 50 milligrams of zinc. But if you're on the higher end of zinc, you need 3 to 5 milligrams of copper because a lot of zinc causes you to deplete copper. Men need zinc more than women because men deplete zinc more than women. And then L-tyrosine, Tyrosine, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 milligrams of L-tyrosine. The other thing on thyroid is the adrenals. Blown adrenals affect thyroid function. And so you want to make sure the adrenals aren't blown. What blows the adrenals? Stress is a huge one. Yes, but you want to build those adrenals like nettle tea, stinging nettle, or ashwagandha and other herbs that build adrenal function. And then you have folks that have Hashimoto's or issues of the antibodies. And the best thing I have found for elevated antibodies is juicing. Juicing is amazing on helping with those antibody issues. Also, if a person had autoimmune disease across the board, the best thing I have found is juicing for autoimmune diseases. Yeah. I think we're a minute after.
I think we're done. Have y'all gotten a lot of information that have you got room in your brains left? I want to come and just do a Martian mind meld